So let's kick things off the Bally, as we always do, with the video games, what we have been playing and stuff in the last couple of weeks. And I hear that you've been getting your groove on with a bit of rhythm in some paradise.
I've been playing, as it's called in the US, it's Rhythm Heaven Megamix, and this came out way back when in the US, and then we had to wait until like October, which was very unfair. But so I played a bit.
Bally, the Switch is apparently region free, so we will never have these problems again.
Give it hopefully. To me. So I played a bit of this game at Gamescom. I'd never played a Rhythm Heaven game before, and at Gamescom, it was actually really good fun. I mean, it was hard to listen to, even though I had over-the-ear headphones on the show floor. But I really enjoyed it, and I was like, right, I think I should pick this up. I also played Rhythm Thief earlier this year. I thought that was quite a good game. This game is just so crazy. I think this is the craziest game I've ever played. I think it's even crazier.
Does it surpass WarioWare?
Yeah, ish. Maybe not. I'd go with yes. Partly because it actually tries to do a story, which is very, very strange, and you're just introduced to like a new character each world who you have this crazy interaction with, and you play as this dude who he's like a pink teddy bear with like a massive afro head.
Right, sounds legit. Yep.
And it's just like, and he's trying to get back to his home world of Heaven World, and you have to go through all these other worlds so that he can get there, and it's just crazy. I actually think that it maybe went ever so slightly story heavy at times. It was like, because the story just doesn't make sense. It's not like one linear thing that makes sense and that has any logic. It's just craziness thrown at you. And
do you think it's just a vehicle for them to like throw some funny weird dialogue in there? Is that
and no, you've actually hit the nail on the head. I think there's some really funny dialogue in there. And as much as the story is pointless and crazy, a lot of the dialogue is cool, and ultimately the core of the game is obviously the rhythm games, but you can't just sell a game with just rhythm games. And I think that the story and the dialogue actually is a nice sort of side part to the game that kind of brings it all together and gives it a bit more theming, which is nice. And they really go along with the idea. They call it flow. So flow is what you need to be good at Rhythm Heaven. And I like how they're very conscious of this skill that you need to be good at flow, and they talk about that. And it's like, it'd be weird if, say, a 2D platformer said, "Oh, you've got to be really good at 2D platforming." That would be really weird. Whereas they always talk about flow. And what's cool about flow in my mind is that it's such a different skill to other video games. So whether it's a shooter or a platformer or a driving game, whatever you want to call it, they're all just using a very different part of your brain in many ways to what flow is trying to get at. And when I talk about flow, how do I define it? So you can play most of the games in this game with your eyes closed. And I'll go one further than that. I had to close my eyes and at points shake my head to a rhythm. And I sound crazy now, but essentially there's one game, for example, where you flip up a ring or a coin. It actually changes, and you have to catch it after exactly 3 seconds. So you press the A button to throw up, and you press the A button to catch, and you have to be spot on. And the game essentially starts with ticking music with like a metronome, and you can hear it. But then as you keep going, it gets harder, it gets faster, and it gets slower, and the music also cuts out at points. So trying to keep a really consistent rhythm on a very, very slow beat is incredibly hard. So I just sort of listened to the beat, closed my eyes, sat back on my pillow, and just sort of rocked my head across my pillow, looking like a crazy person.
If someone walked into the room and like saw you, they would be like, "What the fuck is happening?" So it's like The Exorcist. Like, what's going on?
So I wouldn't recommend. I think this is a terrible game to sort of play out and about on the go, because you just look like an absolute lunatic. But
not to mention like noise and surroundings, having
exactly. You really have to focus. And what's really cool is the game is very, very good at giving you practice. So you're always given like a practice session at the minigame before you attempt the minigame. And
kind of like Mario Party, right? Like, let's practice it before we go.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you muck up the practice, it always has more options to slow it down even further. When I say options, it forces those upon you. So it's like, right, he's not getting this rhythm. We'll slow it down even more, and they add in extra visual prompts, and they slow it down, and they add in even more visual prompts until you've got the rhythm, and then they start building it up again. And then once it's built up, they put you into the game. So the game is really good at holding your hand and making sure you understand what the rhythm is meant to be for the game, and then putting you into the game.
So essentially, you're getting a full-on tutorial for every single game that you're playing.
Yes. And it does.
Do you think that's needed? Like, if they threw you straight in, would you just be out of your depth? Like, do you have to really understand what's going on?
I think there's a few of the earlier games you can get away without a tutorial, but I'd say after the first few worlds, they become so important. And the rhythms near the end start becoming a lot more jazzy, a lot more bluesy. There's a lot more offbeats. One rhythm game, for example, you have to just hit the A button in rhythm with the like these. It's like an army of robots, and they're marching one way, and they basically swap from the beat to the offbeat. And it sounds simple on paper, but switching in your head, trying to switch from a beat to an offbeat of the same rhythm is actually incredibly hard. And it's probably one of the hardest in the game. And there's some games where you can just fluke it. You don't have to nail each game to get by, which I think the game is very kind in doing, because I think you can cock up a fair amount in each game and still get onto the next game. But the downside of that is you receive fewer coins, and the coins are fairly important at points in the game because there are gates. So there are about maybe 4 or 5 gates in the game, and at each gate is a specific mini game. And for the mini game, you can pay a lot of money and do the game on easy. You can play a medium amount of money and do the game on medium, or you can pay hardly any money and play the game on hard. But whatever you pick, you have to beat the game. So if you want to gamble, I normally went for medium, so I'd pay a bit more money, but I'd also not have a terribly tough mini game. But the downside, obviously, is that if you fail, you have to retry, and if you retry, you lose all your money. Exactly. So, and then that forces you to go back in the game and replay games to gain more money. I never actually had to do this, so it's not a complaint or anything. I think the game, in terms of difficulty balance, is good.
So you never felt like completely gated off? Because that's my one worry in games like this, is there might be a specific game that you are just really bad at and that you just get hung up on, and as a result, like, when you can't get past it, you're like, well, fuck, I don't know what to do. Like, that's part of the reason why I returned Trials Fusion on Steam, because I got that in a sale, and I got to this part, and I was like, oh, fucking, I can't do this. This is so hard. So I just gave up,
I mean, for you and me personally, I think we have enough experience with stuff like Guitar Hero, where we definitely do have some sort of sense of rhythm, and I'm confident that you would get through the game as easily as I did. But I totally think that if you don't have any flow,
sure.
and I'm sure there's some people out there who will just not be able to do it. I don't know how much you can train yourself to be rhythmical in a game like this, and how much you can actually learn. I considered myself fairly good at the game. I thought it was challenging at times, but I was never repeating a game more than maybe 3 times. 4 times was maybe the maximum, and that was only like a couple near the end of the game. So I think that it is good, and like I was saying, they really do try to slow it down and bring it back and start incorporating visual prompts in the tutorial, and then take you on. So I do think that the game does everything in its power to stop you hitting brick walls.
Okay, that's good. I mean, like, the one thing that I recall from Giant Bomb Quick Look was Dan Reichert saying that he was like once assigned to review one of these games, and as someone who has zero rhythm, he basically said, I can't review this because I literally can't do it. So I do think that there are people like that who exist.
Yeah. So you're right. It's totally possible to hit a brick wall, but the game does as much as within its power to not. But other things I really loved about the game, I thought that the remixes are fantastic. So at the end of some worlds, as such, you sort of reach this world which is it's a world of remixes of all the previous worlds, and the remix is obviously in WarioWare. They just slam all the games together from different worlds, and boom, there you go. This game does a bit more. It kind of changes the music and it runs all the games together with one song.
Oh, okay.
And on top of that, like there was like some character who's like a bumblebee, for example, and then everything artistically in the minigame was Bumblebee themed. So like they do, there is like an extra effort put in there, which does make the game come together a bit more, which is quite nice. And those remix stage are probably some of my favorite parts of the game. And they do that right up until sort of the final boss, where you've got like a final 3 remixes and so on. So the game is just really like, it always feels really fresh. And I'd say it took me 8 to 9 hours to beat. There were a couple of times where you see the credits along the way, and then they're like, actually, there's more. And it's like, that's cool, fine, great. And I played all of the main story. There were more minigames I could unlock, but they would require a lot more coin getting and doing really well in specific minigames in order to unlock sort of stars, I think, or something that you can then spend. I never got into that. That was sort of beyond what I was.
Bally, I know like sometimes you get very perfectionist about certain things. For example, Pilot Wings Resort. I know that this is a game that like people who enjoy it and want to keep playing, like, they get really good, and it's the sort of game that offers you the opportunity to like go for perfect scores and anything. Do you feel like it's something you'd want to go back to maybe in the future? Because I know like people like Greg Leahy on RFN are very into just like hitting the top scores maximum and really going for it in this game.
Yeah, I think that it does have that quality to it. I mean, obviously, I played it in the sense of for the podcast to talk about now, and I haven't gone back because I was trying to move on to other games. But it's totally, you're right. Yeah, it's totally a game I would be up for going back to. And it's funny you talk about like perfection. Like this game has so many different things that really suit a perfectionist. So there's one sort of random challenge that appears. It sort of refreshes every few hours, I want to say, or maybe it's daily, and you get one shot at it each day or each few hours, and it randomly selects a mini game, and then you get one shot to perfect the mini game. So you can't miss a single beat.
Does it fail if you miss one?
And the second you miss one, the whole thing fails, and you have to wait until another few hours. So I would constantly go back, and the game like gives you updates while you're playing, saying, "Oh, that game's now free to try out if you want to go for the perfect run." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds fun," and I constantly try and fail, but. Yeah, some of the games are just so rhythmically satisfying, like hitting golf balls, baseball bats, these sorts of games. They're just really, really satisfying. And I just think it's overall an incredible game. I would be up for going back to this. I'd be up for picking up the next Rhythm Heaven game. I think it's a fantastic series. And I should say that apparently this game is like, it copies a lot of mini games from the DS and Wii game, I believe.
Yeah, and the GBA one from Japan as well.
Which is
one that never came out in the West. So
I mean, it feels like a really complete package, and I'm excited.
I mean, it's in the name,
see...
Megamix, right? Like it's a mix up of all these different ones.
So I'm super excited to see more of this on Switch, hopefully, and I would love to pick one up. Loved it. Great game, and it came out this year, which is cool.
If you enjoyed this discussion and would like to hear more, consider subscribing to us on YouTube and following the podcast playlist. You can also find us on iTunes and various other places. Follow us on Twitter at TNL Podcast and email us thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.